Let's get right into it. Number 10, it's not an allergy. Let's clear up the thing. Everyone gets wrong at parties. That crimson glow that shows up 2 sips into a beer usually isn't an alcohol allergy, despite what your friend confidently announced. Real alcohol allergies exist, but they're rare, and they're a different beast entirely. What most flushers are dealing with is alcohol intolerance, your body struggling to process the drink, not your immune system declaring war on it. Picture a factory whose waste disposal system just went offline while the assembly line keeps running at full speed. Your body is trying to process the alcohol, one machine on that line is broken, and toxic sludge is backing up into the tank. The tank in this case is your face. Calling it an allergy is comforting, because allergies feel like something that just happens to you. Random, blameless, nobody's fault. This is a little different. It's a chemical traffic jam with your name genetically stamped on it. And here's the part that spoils the mood. An allergy is your immune system overreacting. What you've usually got isn't an immune reaction at all. It's a backlog. The redness isn't the malfunction. The redness is closer to a smoke detector doing precisely its job. People love to wave it off. Oh, I just get red. It's nothing. That casual little shrug is the entire reason this video exists. A rash from a bee sting tells you to avoid bees, and you listen. A red face from a drink is trying to tell you something too, and a lot of people have trained themselves to hear, wow, you look festive, instead of the actual message. We'll get to that message. It's worth taking seriously, and it does not care how many times you've announced that you simply have a low tolerance. Your face isn't blushing. It's filing a complaint. Number 9, meet acetaldehyde. Time to introduce the villain, because every good horror story has one, and yours is a chemical you've never heard of doing damage you can't see. When you drink, your body breaks ethanol down in 2 steps. Step 1. An enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase turns the booze into a compound named acetaldehyde. Step 2. A second enzyme is supposed to sweep that acetaldehyde up and convert it into acetate, which is basically harmless, vinegar's boring cousin. 2 steps. Poison in, poison neutralized. Everybody goes home happy. Here's the thing about acetaldehyde. It is not a nice molecule. Chemically, it's a close relative of formaldehyde. Yes, the embalming stuff, and it damages your DNA and generally behaves like a tiny arsonist wandering around your cells. Under normal circumstances, that's manageable, because step 2 happens fast enough that acetaldehyde barely gets to exist before it's mopped up. It's a poison with a very short lifespan and a very efficient cleanup crew. Now picture step 2 running at a fraction of its normal speed. The alcohol still converts into acetaldehyde right on schedule. That part of the line never slows down. But the cleanup crew is now one exhausted guy with a single mop facing a spill that needed a full team. So acetaldehyde piles up. It builds in your bloodstream, your face, your saliva, the lining of your throat. The flush, the pounding heart, the queasy, why is the room suddenly warm? Feeling in people with the broken enzyme. The main thing driving all that isn't the alcohol itself, it's the acetaldehyde accumulating because the exit door is jammed. Everyone else's body treats acetaldehyde as a fleeting inconvenience. Yours treats it like a house guest who moves in uninvited, raids the fridge, and starts keying the walls. Remember his name? He comes back for number 1. Number 8, you inherited a broken switch. So why is your cleanup crew asleep on the job while your friend drinks half a bottle and stays their normal color? Blame your ancestors, specifically their genes, and even more specifically, 1. The enzyme that's supposed to neutralize acetaldehyde is called ALDH2, and whether yours works at full strength often comes down to a single tiny typo in your DNA, a variant scientists label ALDH2*2. 1 letter swapped in 1 gene, and the enzyme it builds comes out warped, chugging along at a small fraction of its intended power. This is one of the least earned setbacks in your entire body. You didn't do anything. You didn't drink your way into it. You didn't damage an organ. You didn't skip a workout. You were handed a slightly misspelled instruction manual at conception, and 1 line of that manual happened to be the blueprint for your alcohol disposal system. It's the biological equivalent of inheriting a house where every appliance works fine, except the smoke alarm got wired to the doorbell. And because it's genetic, it sticks around. There's no juice cleanse, no clever tolerance building regimen, no mystery supplement that quietly repairs the enzyme. You don't grow out of it, and it certainly doesn't improve if you practice by drinking more. Hold that thought, it ambushes people at number 5. The gene you have is the gene you keep. The oddly useful part is that the flush is a pretty loud signal. Regular, dramatic redness after only a small amount of alcohol strongly suggests your ALDH2 is running at reduced power. It's not a perfect genetic test, though. Flushing can also come from other genetic quirks like certain ADH1B variants, from some medications, and from a handful of other factors, so treat it as a strong hint rather than a lab result. But as free real-time printed on your cheeks health clues go, it's a remarkably honest one. Most people pay a lab to learn something about their DNA. You get a strong clue with a wine cooler. Number 7, the 540 million club. If you've ever felt like the only person at the table who turns into a stop sign after one drink, here's some cold comfort. You are in an absurdly crowded club. Scientists estimate that at least 540 million people carry this exact enzyme variant. That's not a rare medical curiosity tucked away in a textbook. That's a genuinely enormous slice of humanity, all quietly glowing at happy hour. The membership isn't spread evenly, though. This variant is overwhelmingly an East Asian trait. It shows up in a huge share of people with Chinese, Japanese, and Korean ancestry, and in some populations, it climbs toward half of everyone. In Taiwan, for example, researchers have measured it in around 47% of the population. So, if you grew up somewhere in East Asia thinking, wait, doesn't everyone go red? You weren't imagining it. You were accidentally describing local statistics. This is exactly why the reaction picked up nicknames like Asian flush or Asian glow. Not because it's exotic, but because it's genuinely concentrated in one enormous slice of humanity. Which creates a strange blind spot. When something is this common, people stop treating it as information. It becomes a running joke, a party trick, the reason that someone gets branded a lightweight. Nobody screenshots a warning label they've seen 10,000 times. And that's the trap folded inside the number. Rarity makes people cautious, commonness makes them careless. Half a table lighting up like a string of Christmas bulbs feels normal, precisely because it's happening to half the table. But lots of us have it, and it's harmless, are two completely different sentences, and somewhere along the line, the world quietly swapped one for the other. Being in a club with hundreds of millions of members doesn't make the club safe. It just means the warning got drowned out by the size of the crowd. Number 6, one copy or two. Here's where it gets specific because not everyone in the club glows at the same wattage. You inherit 2 copies of this gene, one from each parent, and the exact combination you land decides how your night goes. Picture 2 workers assigned to the acetaldehyde cleanup shift, and the only question that matters is how many of them showed up actually functional. Get 2 broken copies and basically nobody's on the shift. Even a small amount of alcohol becomes an instant misery machine, deep flushing, a hammering heart, nausea, headache, the full package, and fast. It's so unpleasant, so immediately, that most people in this group simply can't drink much at all. And that's the twist. The severity tends to protect them, indirectly. Because the symptoms are so brutal, they usually drink very little. And drinking very little is what substantially lowers their alcohol-related risk. It's not that they're immune to anything, it's that their body makes drinking so awful they rarely get enough on board to do the slow long-term damage. The system fails loudly, and loud turns out to be a lot more survivable than quiet. The genuinely tricky seat is the middle one. One working copy, one broken copy. This is the kind of works, kind of doesn't tier. You still flush, you still feel rough, but not so catastrophically that you're forced to stop. You can push through it, you can finish the beer, order the next one, and gradually get used to the discomfort. Your cleanup crew is understaffed rather than absent, just enough to let you keep drinking, nowhere near enough to actually protect you. That's the cruel design flaw hiding in your DNA. The people whose enzyme fails completely usually end up protected by how awful it feels. They rarely drink enough to find out. The people whose enzyme half fails get exactly enough function to keep going, and exactly enough exposure to pay for it later. The mild flusher, the one shrugging, it fades after a couple drinks, is often the one strolling straight toward the real risk. Being able to power through your body's alarm isn't a strength, it's a loophole, and it's about to matter enormously. Number 5, tolerance is a liar. There's a sentence that sounds like personal growth and behaves more like a countdown timer. I used to go really red, but I've built up a tolerance now. What that usually means is you've learned to ignore an alarm, not that you've fixed what's setting it off. Here's what people misread. Some folks really do become former flushers. The redness genuinely fades over years of drinking. But the exact reason isn't fully nailed down, and here's what a fading flush definitely does not mean. It does not mean your enzyme repaired itself, and it does not mean drinking suddenly became safe. Your genes didn't quietly upgrade because you kept showing up to the bar. Whatever the precise mechanism, desensitization, adaptation, or just not noticing it as sharply anymore, the acetaldehyde is still being produced, and you often end up drinking further into the night before anything tells you to stop. This is the pattern that gets the one-copy crowd in trouble. Early on, the flush and the misery act like a governor on an engine, capping how much you'll pour down. Push past it night after night, and that governor loosens, not necessarily because the underlying issue improved, but because your experience of it did. You've effectively turned down one of the few built-in safety signals you were born with, one round at a time, convinced you were leveling up. The bitter joke is that the visible flush was the friendliest shape the warning could possibly take. It's obvious, it's instant, and it costs nothing. Trading it away for the ability to handle your drink doesn't make the underlying problem go away, it just makes it quieter. You didn't beat the reaction, you muted it. And a muted alarm doesn't mean the building is fine, it just means you've agreed not to hear about it for a while. Hold on to that image. It's basically the entire plot of number 2. Number 4, your heart meds get weird. Here's a plot twist nobody warns you about because it shows up decades after the drinking discussion is over. That same broken enzyme, the one flubbing your acetaldehyde cleanup, moonlights in a completely different job. It helps your body activate a classic heart medication called nitroglycerin. The little tablet people slip under the tongue when chest pain hits during angina. Turns out nitroglycerin isn't the active ingredient all by itself. Your body has to convert it into something useful, and ALDH2 is one of the tools for that conversion. The same enzyme you inherited running at reduced power. So the same genetic typo that makes you glow after a beer may also blunt how well that under-the-tongue heart drug works inside you. Researchers have found that people carrying this variant can get a weaker response to sublingual nitroglycerin because the machinery meant to switch the drug on is running low. But here's the crucial caveat: this doesn't guarantee the medication fails. Your body has other pathways to activate nitrates too, so it's a may work less well, not a won't work. Still, sit with how strange that is. A trait most people file under mildly embarrassing party quirk is quietly wired into your cardiovascular toolkit. The gene doesn't know you only think about it near alcohol. It's the same gene, in the same cells, doing the same reduced power job, whether you're clinking glasses at dinner or decades later, sitting in a cardiologist's office. This one isn't meant to send you into a panic, it's meant to reframe the whole thing. The flush was never really about the flush. It's a visible flag for an enzyme with its fingers in far more than tonight's hangover. If you know you carry this variant, it's a genuinely useful thing to mention to a doctor someday, long after last call. Your body has been dropping hints in red ink for years. It'd be a shame to only ever read them as lightweight. Number 3, cigarettes pour gasoline on it. If drinking with this enzyme is playing with a lighter, adding cigarettes is standing in the puddle of gasoline while you do it. On their own, both alcohol and tobacco are already rough on the delicate lining of your mouth, throat, and esophagus. Together, in a body that clears acetaldehyde poorly, they don't just add up, they gang up. Here's the mechanism, and it's grimly elegant. Tobacco smoke contains acetaldehyde directly, alcohol generates even more of it, and in a flusher, that acetaldehyde lingers in the saliva instead of getting swept away. So every time you take a drag between sips, you're bathing the same stretch of tissue in the toxin from 2 directions at once, one source topping up the other, both pooling in a throat whose cleanup crew already clocked out. It's not 2 separate problems sharing a room. It's 2 problems shaking hands and comparing notes. That local pooling is the part people underestimate. This isn't some abstract poison drifting harmlessly around your bloodstream. It's concentrated acetaldehyde sitting on the surface of your throat lining, the tissue it contacts most directly, lingering there far longer than it would in someone with a fully working enzyme. Add a cigarette, and you're actively resupplying the puddle. the tissue barely gets a moment to recover before the next round arrives. So the smoker who flushes and drinks isn't running one risk plus another risk. They've stacked three separate factors, the broken enzyme, the alcohol, the tobacco, into a single spot. And those factors don't politely take turns. They amplify each other. The good news buried in here is that none of it is fixed in stone. Because the danger comes from the combination, breaking any part of it, dropping the cigarettes, easing off the alcohol, pulls a leg out from under the whole thing. This is the beat where just cut back a little stops sounding like nagging and starts sounding like the single highest value move on the table. And it sets up why the popular fix for all this is so quietly disastrous. Number 2, the flush blocking pill trap. Somewhere online, someone figured out a hack, and it might be the most dangerous piece of party advice in this entire countdown. The trick: pop a certain type of antihistamine, the same family as some common heartburn tablets, before drinking, and the flush largely disappears. No red face, no obvious glow. Drink like everyone else, blend right in. Sounds like a miracle. It's much closer to a hazard wearing a miracles outfit. Here's the problem, and it's the whole ball game. Those pills don't fix your broken enzyme. They don't help you clear acetaldehyde. They don't touch the toxin at all. What they do is dial back the redness, the visible symptom, while the acetaldehyde keeps accumulating in your bloodstream and your throat exactly like it always did. You haven't solved anything. You've unplugged the warning light while the engine runs just as hot. The situation is unchanged. You've simply paid a small fee to stop smelling the smoke. And remember everything from number 5. The flush was your governor, the built-in cap that made you stop before the exposure got serious. These pills don't just let you drink more. They erase one of the most honest signals your body has, on purpose, at the exact moment you're about to drink enough for it to matter. Someone flushing hard tends to slow down. Someone chemically hiding the flush feels fine, looks fine, and keeps pouring, all while their tissues soak in a known carcinogen with the alarm switched off. Best case, you feel great tonight. The bill just gets mailed to a later address. That's what makes this the ultimate trap. It's marketed as protection when it's closer to the reverse. Real protection would be drinking less, the one move that actually lowers the toxin. Instead, the hack keeps the toxin high and deletes the warning. It optimizes the one variable you'd never want to optimize: how comfortable you feel while the exposure happens. Which brings us, finally, to what that exposure actually risks. Number 1, your red face is a cancer alarm. Here's the sentence this whole video has been walking toward, and it's not just a metaphor. In people who drink, that flush is a recognized red flag for elevated cancer risk, and scientists have looked at this hard. The acetaldehyde piling up in flushers who drink is tied to a chemical the World Health Organization's Cancer Research Agency classifies as a Group 1 carcinogen. Now, one thing worth understanding: Group 1 is about how certain the evidence is that something can cause cancer, not how much cancer it causes. It sits in the same certainty tier as tobacco and asbestos, but same tier of certainty is not same size of risk. It means the link is firmly established, not that one beer equals one cigarette. The specific danger is esophageal cancer, squamous cell carcinoma of the food pipe. And it's one of the deadlier cancers out there, with survival rates that are genuinely bleak. And the link isn't subtle. People carrying one broken copy of the enzyme who drink regularly have been found to face a several-fold higher risk of esophageal cancer than people with the fully working enzyme. How much higher isn't one fixed number. It swings with how much you drink, whether you smoke, your exact genotype, your sex, and the population studied. But the pattern is consistent. Same beers, same nights out, meaningfully different odds. Let's be clear about what this is and isn't, though. Carrying this variant is not a cancer diagnosis, it's a risk factor, and crucially, that elevated esophageal cancer risk shows up mainly in people who drink alcohol. The gene by itself in someone who doesn't drink is a very different story. Think of it as a dial, and alcohol is the hand that turns it. Now, every earlier item snaps into focus. The flush that usually isn't an allergy was pointing here. The acetaldehyde with the formaldehyde cousin was the mechanism. The tolerance that felt like a win was you turning down the alarm for this. The heartburn pill hack that hid the redness was muffling the warning for this. It was all one story. But here's the part that actually matters, because this isn't a video about doom, it's a video about a warning you get to act on. The risk is driven by the alcohol, which means it responds enormously to drinking less. In one modeling estimate, researchers calculated that if moderate to heavy drinking Japanese men who carry one inactive copy of the enzyme scaled back to light drinking, a large share of their esophageal cancers, roughly 53%, could be prevented. It's a model, not a promise. And it's specific to that group. But the direction it points is unmistakable. Turn the dial down. The flush isn't a curse or a verdict. In a drinker, it's one of the more useful health signals your body will ever hand you for free, printed on your cheeks in advance while there's still time to do something about it. Most people spend their lives wishing their body would just tell them what's wrong. Yours offers a strong hint. In red. The only question left is whether you decide to read it. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.